Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all good this fine day. With the release of Warcraft 3 and the work I've been doing on a little side project, which I shall let you into soon, we're going to be looking back at BFA. I thought it would be... we take some time and we talk story again. I know, don't judge me, but we're going to talk story again. Now, Warcraft 3 carries much of WoW upon its amazing, storied shoulders. Many say that the decline of WoW has happened since Arthas was slain. If WoW is A New Hope, TBC is Empire, Wrath of the Liche King would be Return of the Jedi, then what we currently have now in World of Warcraft is Disney Star Wars. And we all know how that's turning out. Now, even Mr. Pandaria, that entire expansion comes from one character in Warcraft 3. And I will say this on a personal point, I will say that Mr. Pandaria is actually one of my favourite expansions. Now, I've gone over my issues with BFA before regarding the story, and fingers crossed we're going to stay away from that. I've no doubt we're going to delve into BFA. We can't help it, but we're going to stay away from picking on the easy target, and instead we're going to focus on following the story at large, like the overarching story of the expansions. We're going to look at the episodic expansions, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a bit. The disappearance of characters, the setup and the payoff. So let's not wait around. Instead, let's dive right into the story at large. Whew! This is going to be a big one. So many moons ago, Chris Metzen came out and said, "We have expansions lined up like bullets in a gun." I believe that was true. I've no doubt about it. But the threads, I believe, have changed. I wonder at times if this is why things don't feel like they line up entirely. The easy one to draw upon is obviously Legion into BFA. I know I said I wouldn't talk about BFA, but hey, it's here, let's deal with it. Sylvanas and Genn, that's the big one. If you remember before in Stormheim with the whole story about Genn and Sylvanas wanted something, Genn was trying to stop her, chasing each other, and then it basically ended in fighting for towers. And no more of the storyline was done. It was cut due to time. Due to constraints, whatever else, but it was cut. Now, that was fine if it was a story that wasn't necessarily going to go anywhere or just showed the conflict between Genn and Sylvanas and the Forsaken and the Worgen. But it was the entire basis of the following expansion. So this means we have no idea why we're suddenly at war, why trees are burning. Now, I know what many of you are going to say. Grim! We have the books to make sense of all of this, you fool. First, I would say this. Any form of entertainment that relies upon another form of entertainment to fill the gaps is being lazy and is just money grabbing. You can have books, comics, games to expand your universe. I'm all for that. I love the Warcraft Chronicles. I love all that kind of thing. But it should be to complement. It should be to expand upon this world, not to fill in the gaps of blatant lazy storytelling. Secondly, Before the Storm is everything wrong with modern WoW storytelling. I'm just going to say, I'm just going to come out of it. It bends the world and characters to fit the needs of the story, rather than telling a good story within the lore, the world, and the characters that we know and love. Now, before people gather pitchforks and start going, "Die, Grim, die! You're attacking Kirsty Gul'dan." Easy, Tiger. I'm not. I have said many times in the past, I don't think she can write characters other than humans. But outside of that, I have no issue with her writing. This comes down to Blizzard. They're giving a writer a rough overview of what the expansion is meant to be. They're giving them the theme of what they want them to explore within the story and then saying, go for it. What you get is something that plagues modern writing in general. Look at Star Wars, Star Trek, any of your beloved things from our childhood. They've all been ruined by this. And as I said before, it makes the world fit just what they want to tell you. Armies in Game of Thrones. Oh, they can just teleport now. We don't need to march troops. They just teleport because that's where the story needs them to be. It's an easy example. In WoW, we can pick a couple of examples. And Before the Storm, the Forsaken starting a council because Sylvanas wasn't there. Makes very little sense if you look at it in terms of Sylvanas wouldn't have left without saying, this is what's going to happen. This is somebody that's in charge or I'm going to send Nathanos back, which they show in the books that Nathanos goes back there. They're not going to independently just create a council. It was required because the people in charge of that council were needed to tie in with Anduin and the butler and so on and so forth. It's there because the story needs that connection. It needs that to happen. Then you have Celia Minithil being now apparently light forsaken. There's nothing in there to... Okay, why does this happen? Can we explain this? There's nowhere where Velen's like, we should not do this. I'm having real issues with the light right now. Everything I spoke to with Velen... with Illidan, everything we went through... We need to talk about this more. There's nowhere where, you know, if Velen and Anduin could sit down and really talk about what they think just happened, that would be really interesting and would tie in with Legion. Again, forgiving all the Forsaken apart from Sylvanas, just because some of them shook hands. And he's like, well, this is a beautiful thing. Everybody's forgiven. You're wasting amazing character development. You have Gen losing his son, and what would have been a far more interesting development in his character and why he can, you know, go with the Forsaken, and he was like, yeah, okay, I don't mind the Forsaken now, would be, let's say he was stuck on Nadjatar with some Forsaken, and they had to battle through this together, and all of a sudden he's like, actually, do you know what? The Forsaken, these troops are under my command, because they have to be, because we need to survive this hostile place. And do you know what? They're not bad people. I understand they're all individuals now. I'm just tarnishing this brush of Sylvanas. But they're not that. It would have been an interesting character development for Gen. It would have been an interesting exploration in war. And sometimes that you have this is my enemy, but they're actually not. It would have been an interesting subplot in BFA. But no. Now breathe. And this happens more and more in WoW. And it leads us into our next point, which is episodic expansions. But before we head on over and start talking about that, my last thought regarding Before the Storm. Okay, and where we currently are with expansions and detail-driven things. Okay, and that is, in the book, the Worgen have tails. Just think, the Worgen have tails in the book. No one at Blizzard said anything. Nobody picked that up before that book went to print. The state of those little things tells you a lot. Let's not forget in what season the Starbucks cup appears in. Little things tell you an awful lot about the current state. It would have taken you 2 seconds to log in and see that Worgen don't have tails. But episodic expansions, let's carry on. Now what do I mean by this? It's old school Star Trek reference. So we start out, we're in space, we're exploring. Distress signal. We go and explore. Things go bad. Dun dun dun. Things get even worse. Dun dun dun. We overcome. We win. Yay! And then we're in space exploring again. It's a self-contained bubble story. The world around it didn't change. We just go on this adventure. We can sit down, we can watch it, and then that's it. It's done. Little bubble. Tune in next week for the thrilling adventure of Thrall in Space. Nothing seems to affect our world. Now, we had the Cataclysm, which was interesting. It actually changed Azeroth. It changed the map. But so far, easy for me to say, Nefarian, the World Breaker, Deathwing himself, has been more of an impact than an old god running free. Which is, bear that in mind, it's the first time it's ever happened in our lifetimes on Azeroth that an old god has run free. We've had them slowly breaking free from their prisons, but this is actually an old god loose, able to strut his stuff. Or, if that's not enough for you, we've had the two of the biggest armies of Azeroth having a world war supercharged by Azerite weaponry. We have goblins with massive cannons that could be Azerite power, that could decimate continents, but nothing in the world has been affected. And I've said this before many a time, we very politely kept this war to 2 small islands, which is very good of us. I like that. We have a massive sword sticking out of our planet, which apparently we're not going to talk about. We're going to defeat N'Zoth, and BFA is over. Have a coffee, have a cup of tea, whatever it is you want to drink, and let's head to Shadowlands. Let's not worry about that. Then we're going to see the face of death. We're going to win. We're going to have a cup of tea. And then the next thing will come along and we'll deal with that. And probably while we're in Shadowlands having a cup of tea, I don't know, Magni has just magically made the sword disappear somehow. Nothing affects the world or the characters. We live in these little episodic bubbles. The world doesn't feel organic, like it's growing around us, like things are happening. Now, nostalgia's great. It's great to be able to go to Crossroads and go, oh, look at this. But I would love to be able to go to Crossroads, and there was a few of the old buildings there, but say the Magar Orcs, for instance, had made Crossroads now into their home. The few remaining Magar Orcs had built Crossroads into a massive fortress where they now reside. I mean, you could still see, oh look, there's this bit, there's that, oh, there's the old vent, I remember this. But now it's really cool. It looks like the world's actually growing and things are actually happening. You know, the Magar Orcs need somewhere to live. Why don't we have the Forsaken creating somewhere? Yeah, the tunnels that are underneath Orgrimmar that apparently just don't exist unless we really need them to. Like, we have to go and rescue Bane. Why not have those tunnels now being an underground world that the Forsaken can live in? And to tie in with this idea of episodic expansions, we also have the characters. Because we have episodic characters as well, which is such a shame. WoW has the ability to tell a really interesting story following the main characters of the Horde and the Alliance. And I don't mean us. I mean the actual leaders, the Sylvanas, the Bane, you know, the Anduin, the Gen, all of these characters. There's loads of them, and their stories are so rich and could be so interesting. Each expansion we could watch them grow, conflicts between them, betrayals. Again, and I know I keep referencing it, but you can have something like the early seasons of Game of Thrones. Each expansion flowing into the next, we watch the weight of the things they have done before shape what they are going to do in the future. You know, watching the weight of men dying at his command, now he leads them. That's a huge thing for Anduin. Watching the anger of the Night Elves, as in partly they feel they've been betrayed by the Alliance, they've lost their home. You got Velen, his view of the light. You know, he's had conversations with Illidan, and Illidan's talking to him about, you just blindly follow the light. You never thought to question. You never thought to do, what did you want to do? Did you want to stay and save your people? Or did you just blindly get on that ship and condemn your people to the life they lead? Those sort of things, and these characters don't talk about them, don't interact with them. And it'd be really interesting to see more, to see this depth. As I said before, Celia Minithil was raised. Velen could have been talking about it, but this isn't a good idea. The light does things for its own purpose. I saw what they tried to do to Illidan. Be wary, Anduin. Do not blindly follow the light like I did. Again, interesting. You may have noticed that I've only spoken about the Alliance, and I'm a Horde player. Why they haven't gained an interesting, you know, story of conflict and depth and interest, I don't know. They're far more interesting to me than the Horde. Far more interesting. And I'm hoping Tyrande is leading in that direction. You know, her coming into conflict with Anduin, again standing between the two, understanding her anger, but also Anduin's need as a leader for peace. Then you've got characters like Khadgar, and this is where we get to the episodic. Khadgar's just disappeared. Now, yes, we had the whole conversation with him in Silverus. He was like, "Are you two are stupid for having this war?" And you're like, "Yep, you're right." And then he just disappears. Now, why are we now, when we're at peace and we're fighting this old god and all these things happening, are we not at least popping into Khadgar and saying, "Yo, Khadgar, oh, it's crazy, the war's over now, but what do you think about this old god running loose? Is there anything in, you know, the Tower of Medivh or anything that could help us? Do you have any information in Karazhan? Is there anything you can do?" No, we don't talk to him at all. We don't even have, as far as I'm aware, and apologies again, I'm a Horde player, Jaina doesn't say, "I'll go and talk to Khadgar," or anything. There's no reference. And that's the problem. Once a character is no longer needed, we just cut them off. We forget them. We go, off you go. I haven't heard from Velen. And again, I say I'm a Horde player. Yeah, these characters are just dropped until they're picked up again and needed. I would be intrigued, if you were a loyalist to Sylvanas, why hasn't a missive, and I'm a goblin as well, why a missive, easy for me to say, hasn't come from, say, Gallywix, going, "Hey, yo, I'm being such and such. Heat's on me at the moment. I think I've got an amazing deal," or something like that. You can either turn him into Gazlo, or you can work with him. Just those sort of threads keep the world interesting, keep the world turning. You go, okay, this is going on. And it's my little thing in my faction for the goblins. And you could have the same for Bane, you could have the same for, you know, the Forsaken, all these different things. You know, the Forsaken going, people spit on us now because of Sylvanas, but she did the right thing. And you could be like a Sylvanas loyalist within the Forsaken. Or you could be open, go, "No, we need a democratic council, we need these things." Then I could dribble on. I could keep, you know what I'm like about stories, I could keep dribbling on forever and a day. And as I say, I'm working on a project right now to go back over BFA, the flaws, the faults, where I think it's actually hurt WoW, stuff like that. So hopefully that project will be coming out as we kind of get probably alpha and beta release. We'll go through it and be up on the channel. But let's go for our conclusion. Let's go with what we think. So simply speaking, let's be honest, WoW's story right now is a hot mess. We have the old gods gone. And I don't just mean gone, I mean gone. We have wasted the old gods simply to plug weak storyline in BFA. It is now canon that all of the old gods have been dealt with. Great. That is a massive waste and such a letdown for the player base. BFA should have been a really simple expansion about war. Truly putting the war in Warcraft and the cost at ground level, what that meant. Not only for the leaders like Sylvanas and Anduin, but for the everyday, peons and grunts on the ground. We should have seen it through their eyes. Anduin, as I said before, having to face watching his men ship off at his command to die. Bringing new allies in to the Horde and the Alliance just to put them into the meat grinder of war. More on the Night Elves. You could have the Night Elves literally having this unsatiable bloodlust, almost like the Orcs. So the Orcs back in the day have the Elves so just driven by hatred and anger now and fury that they're cutting off Orc heads and like nailing them to trees. Sylvanas raising the dead to feed her personal army, and Bomsondi and his masters, and the Liche King becoming more and more angry at what she's doing as more and more dead on Azeroth have just risen to her ranks. The Alliance, because of this, on the brink of losing against the undead Sylvanas hordes. And the rest of the Horde sat there fearing for their lives because they're not needed. It's just the Sylvanas undead horde. And yes, I get it's like the Iron Horde, or it's like, Garrosh's horde, or it's like, the Scourge. Maybe the Scourge by another name. But this would still be a more interesting story than the one we were given. And you can still bring the Naga into this. Have Ashara fearing Sylvanas. She wants to free N'Zoth because you can see the power that Sylvanas is gaining for herself. So as a side plot, Sylvanas kind of sends us, the remnants of the Horde, go and deal with this little matter on these islands. You could have the Alliance fleet get stuck there. And again, we spoke about Gen being stuck with the Forsaken. Have them going to Nadjatar, find out what the hell's going on. He gets trapped with his little exploratory band. Then we fight Ashara. You can still have the Eternal Palace. But Ashara at the end runs. She's free. She goes off with the dagger, which she can use to free N'Zoth. Yeah, but that's a future expansion. We haven't wasted the Black Empire. Like a lot of the actual systems we get in WoW, the Legion legendaries, the artifact weapons, the Azerite power, the essences, the corruption, they're all good ideas. But in Blizzard's own words, they failed to live as long as the expansion they were in. They had to change things, tweak them, add them. Azerite armor should have been it, but we had essences and we had corruption because it failed, it didn't work. And the story team seems to have great ideas, and they don't seem to be able to give the legs to their stories to last. And more importantly, they don't blend into each other in a way that grows the world around us. Yes, we have, Gul'dan went through a portal, and we have WoD to Legion, which was interesting, but we don't see any more growth. We don't see what happened to Draenor and the Army of the Light, because that's a fascinating story when you go and do the Magar Orc allied race. On a side note, go and do that. It's a fantastic story that would be great to see more of. Potentially the Army of the Light coming through with Celia Minithil being changed. All of these links, all of these threads. These threads that could be woven around the world we live in, making it more rich and interesting. This planning, yes, would add depth. It would make more interesting story opportunities that don't feel forced or come from nowhere, where characters just disappear because we no longer need them, or appear because they're suddenly completely and utterly central to the plot point. Plus, it makes for better dungeons, better raids, better activities like the islands, like the warfronts. It makes them more rich, and I don't just say that in jest. That is how much I believe the story affects all aspects of the game. It drives all of these aspects. If you have a good story, a good foundation to build off of. I've said this in numerous videos. If you have a good foundation to build off of, and the foundation of WoW is the story, then everything else is only improved by that. And I'm hoping for a return to great storytelling in Shadowlands. We have many favourites coming back, maybe in spirit form, but at least it's giving us some link to Warcraft 3 and the amazing world and characters that spawns. Now, I could go on talking for days about this, but I think I'll stop there because I'm actually losing my voice. Apologies for this being a long one, but I think it's worth it. I'm very passionate about the lore and the world and the story of WoW. But that's me done, ladies and gentlemen, because I am legitimately losing my voice now. Have a great day, and I will catch you all tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, for listening this long. Have a good one.